we're here today with Garry Noonan, the Director, Innovation for Ardmore Shipping, for discussion on how decarbonization in the maritime sector is impacting this product and chemical tanker company. Garry, to start, can you give us a by the numbers look at Ardmore Shipping today using the metrics of your choice?
I can indeed, Greg, and thank you for having me here. Ardmore Shipping's predominantly a product tanker company. We have a couple of smaller chemical tankers, but overall we have 22 owned vessels, just shy of 30 operated. We have just over 50 people in the company. We have a joint venture also with our technical manager partners in Anglo-Eastern, which is Anglo-Ardmore, and that has about 15 people permanently employed in the office in Hong Kong. Overall, we have on the 22 vessels, we have a pool of in around 900 seafarers, kind of up and down depending on comings and goings, but our retention rate is quite high, so it's up there around the 900 mark. Gross revenue last year was in around the 450 million mark. So things are going well right now. The markets are hot, life is good. That also has its negatives, which we'll get into. It's not too often people say, hot market has its negatives, but when you start talking about the energy transition, it can be a double-edged sword.
So, as Ardmore's Director Innovation, can you give a concise overview of your responsibilities, as well as the size and the shape of the people and the technical assets under your guys?
Yeah, sure, Greg. So, as a Director of Innovation, my main role is basically looking for ways to, I suppose, make our vessels more efficient, make our processes more efficient, looking towards the energy transition, in the future, but also trying to, get our vessels to a better platform to enable them to have the longevity to trade as far as we want. In the innovation team, there's two of us. But we operate within the wider energy transition plan team. So basically we have a team of about 10 people, at least one from every different department within the corporation, to ensure that, we're getting a depth of research across all different fields and not just the technical field. One of the biggest things one of our biggest remits is, formulating and executing our energy transition plan. It's not solely what we do, but it is the biggest part of what we do. At the end of the day, we are a shipping company, so efficient ships are paramount to our business. But it's not limited to that. We're looking at systems on shore side, see if we can increase efficiencies across systems, reduce the man hours wasted on duplication. So there's a lot of a scope, and it's a broad scope for that particular reason. It gives me the remit to talk to different departments, work interdepartmentally. I'm not siloed in an individual department, which gives me the flexibility, from senior management to the bottom, to discuss individual issues, team issues, but more importantly, corporate issues. But the ultimate goal here is, increase efficiency, increase profit.
In Ardmore's financial results, I noted that it said a robust balance sheet gives us the flexibility, among others, for a continued investment in performance enhancing technology across the fleet. Broadly speaking, and kind of to kick us off, can you discuss the Ardmore philosophy on technology development and delivery across its fleet?
Certainly. And I'd like to start by actually saying, having a strong balance sheet doesn't really change my job all that much. I mean, it makes it easier to ask for money when you have money, but I suppose our philosophy has always been, if it's good for business, it's good for business, whether you're in an up cycle or a down cycle. In fact, in a bad market, the energy efficiency increases mean more to you. So energy efficiency has been part of our DNA since day one. But the way we look at projects is, each project has to stand on its own two legs. So if you can justify it in a hot market, then, you can justify it in a weak market. Now, having, a strong balance sheet does give us the ability to look further down the line. We wanted, when we started our energy transition plan, to play a pivotal role in the industries, transition, not just Ardmore's. And, to that point, we started our joint venture of E1 Marine, which is a methanol to hydrogen reformation company, as we see that being an enabler to fuel cells, deep sea and inland waterways in the future. We really don't see a route to fuel cells without that. And we do think that fuel cells have a great place in our industry. So I suppose in a way it gives us the flexibility to, maybe pay a bit more attention to the industry's problems and, strives. And also, without losing sight of our own.
Like I said at the outset, we talk about the new technologies relentlessly in what we do. My point being, when you look at the technologies that are already in service on the Ardmore fleet, can you pinpoint one or two, a technology or a technique that has most significantly improved the fleet performance in terms of fuel burn and emissions?
Yes, certainly. To be honest, my biggest issue here is trying to narrow it down to two, but I suppose one of my favorite ones is simply variable speed drives. As you know, vessels are designed for worst case scenario, fully laden, full speed under, challenging environmental conditions. We rarely see one of them, three of them all together. And, the whole engine room plant is designed to run at 100%. So by employing variable speed drives, on the main consumers, the supply fans, the LT pumps, the seawater pumps, and some others, we've actually seen drastic reductions in our fuel consumption. Almost a third of our daily hotel load has been reduced. So, when we looked at that, we thought we'd be looking at somewhere in around 1.5 year payback. And, here we are on the first one, 8-9 months in, and we're pretty much there already. So, stuff like that, it's great. When we look at, other projects such as, the hull coatings, paint is expensive, but when you compare it to, the life cycle of the paint, it's relatively cheap. So, we try and go for the highest performing coating we can. We're also conscious, being MRs, we don't go to, the world's best ports. Sometimes, you don't have the lovely rubber fenders that you would like. So mechanical damage is a big part of our world, especially going through Panama. So, it's a trade-off between high efficiency coatings and, glass flake coatings to protect the cosmetic appearance of the vessel. And that's something, we always try and toy with. One of the other great technologies that, doesn't seem to have been taken up much is, micro boilers. And, we have waste heat unit or economizers on the main engines. They're, general practice to have those, but we don't have them on the generators. And, by utilizing them, we've been able to reduce a sizable amount of our boiler consumption while in port. And, it sounds like, there's not that much to it, but depending on the environmental conditions, could be upwards of a ton a day, which, not too long ago was $800-900, so. And one thing's for sure, future fuels are certainly not going to get any cheaper. So, efficiencies mean even more in the future than they will today. But, that's just two of, I suppose, the high level ones. There's a lot of work we're doing, on the software side of things and the soft skills side, which I think, may not have been utilized to the full extent. It's a culture change, and a culture change is always hard to push through, but it's also hard to quantify the savings afterwards. It's almost, you have to believe in it. But, we've seen the guys on board, when they understand, and by giving them the feedback on the savings, showing them what they're doing is making a difference. And we can see them actually picking up the mantle and, coming up with ideas. And one of the avenues we have in our energy transition team is a WhatsApp group with the engineers in the company, because, they're the guys that are dealing with these issues day to day. And, we, I suppose, jokingly say, there's no point in telling me what you could have done yesterday. Tell me what you can do tomorrow, because once it's done, it's already gone. But if you tell me there's a problem, then we can fix it. And, you're trying to get across to the seafarers that like they're not there to support us, we're there to support them. At the end of the day, it's a shipping company. Without ships, without seafarers, none of us would have a job. So, you know, we're trying to instill in them that we're here to support them. We're a tool in the office that they can utilize to fix problems they're seeing. And as I said, if you have 900 people looking for a problem, you'll see an awful lot more, you know, avenues for, you know, generating savings than you will if it was just, you know, 10, 12 people in the office.
Yeah, I just found what you said about coatings particularly interesting. From your experience with coatings, I mean, which coatings do you use? And I guess, do you directly relate a fuel savings to that coating?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to
Yeah.
quantify in that, you know, no two ships are the same. You know, they'll all, and you talk to one manufacturer, you talk to another manufacturer, they'll say the fouling challenge on the opposition's vessel was a lot tougher than ours. You know, generally, we have historically used international paints and Jotun. Where now we're trialing in one vessel and looking further to the future from using Hempel's X7. But, you know, to come back to my fouling challenge and, you know, companies telling you the percentage, I suppose, first of all, the first question you have to ask is what's the baseline they're basing that off of. And, you know, a lot of times it'll be their most basic at biocidal fouling, anti-fouling. But one of the things we've done on one of our vessels, which I'm not sure if it's an industry first, but it's certainly not very popular, was we managed to convince both International and Jotun to paint one side of a ship each. That way we don't have the comments of, you know, oh, they have different fouling challenge to us. You know, the proof is in the pudding. We can see it. You know, I mean, it's not done yet. We're still in the middle of the cycle, so I can't really give you conclusions. But, you know, that to us is, we saw a problem. You know, we're getting wishy-washy information. You know, you'll always hear someone say the other person had it easier. This to us was a way of actually, you know, cutting out that noise and going, right, put your best product on this ship and we'll see whose is better.
So, you know, we talked about what's on the fleet already. Looking ahead, what technologies do you see as having the greatest potential to help Ardmore reduce its fuel consumption and its emissions?
So that there's many different aspects to this. I would say, you know, there's the big ticket items, the wind assisted propulsions, you know, the air lubrications. Realistically, they have a long payback period. You know, depending on our size of vessels, they're in around the 7 to 8 year mark. Due to the age profile of our vessels, you know, the first opportunity we would get to put them on is second special. And, you know, as we deal with oil majors, we generally have a life cycle of 15 years for our vessels. So, you know, having a 5-year payback on a 7-year, you know, a 5-year timeline on a 7-year payback, you know, doesn't make economical sense. But certainly, you know, I think they will be big news in the future, certainly once, you know, people start building. I also think there's quite a bit of work to be done on the commercial side of things. You know, we operate on a hurry up and wait basis at the moment, you know, and this is a seismic shift in the industry. If we could get to a point where, you know, we can collaborate with our customers, you know, share this fuel savings, you know, cancel out the demurrage, somehow figure out a way that, you know, everyone can win out of this. You know, you read some of the papers out there, there's a potential for 30% savings on CO2 emissions, just purely based on the way we operate a vessel. Now, I think, you know, there's a lot of work needs to go into that. You know, you have to have like high frequency data, you have to have, you know, the background of the vessel. But I think, to me, that would be the holy grail long before we ever talk about future fuels, was, you know, to be more efficient with what we have right now. And I think, you know, when I look at that, if you could get all the different silos, and, you know, we're all well aware our industry is quite fragmented in that basis, but if we could get everyone on board, you know, there's a lot we could do with what we have now. And I think that would be something we could do here and now.
And again, just following up on the conversation that we had probably about a month and a half ago, so when you look at the alternative fuels under development, specifically, where do you see opportunity and where do you see challenge for the Ardmore fleet?
Well, challenge is easy everywhere. So I suppose there's many different fuels on the horizon. Being that we operate in the spot market makes it a lot more difficult for us. We don't have set ports. But even when I look at liner trades and I look at, green corridors, a lot of those projects are not going to go live anytime soon. We're in a capital intensive business, and making the wrong decision could be fatal. You only need to look at the MR order book to understand how dubious people are with future technologies. And if you're looking at a 15-year cycle of a vessel, as we currently do now, obviously we would look at having a post Ardmore life as well, but I'm just specifically talking trading with oil majors. 15 years time, you're into the mid-30s. I don't think future fuels are going to be readily available. And I suppose when I started out in the energy transition and the role of director of innovation, I kind of thought I was going to be in the middle of this massive transition, from sail to steam, and now this was going to be our transition. But if I'm frankly honest, I'm worried it's going to pass me out, or I'm going to pass it out, if you know what I mean. I won't be around for it, and that's quite worrying, because and I mean, I understand people's skepticism, because if you're paying twice, maybe even 4 times the price for your fuel, if someone else is doesn't have to pay that, then they have a massive competitive advantage over you, which means you may not be commercially viable. So I think in the grand scheme of things, unless we have price parity, depending on, and I mean, there's many ways you could do that. We could speak about that for hours on end, but ultimately, unless you have price parity across the different types of fuels, you're not going to get mass adoption. And for us in the spot, without mass adoption, we simply can't make that decision. Now, I mean, personally, and obviously Ardmore believes in methanol, but it just, right now in the near future, we don't see a pathway to putting, methanol propelled vessels on the spot market. Now, that's not to say we wouldn't work. One of our energy transition business streams is energy transition projects, which would be, working with our customers to help them to overcome their decarbonization troubles, if you want to call it that. Helping them using our expertise to build vessels, specific for a trade, and then putting them on long-term time charter, where we could both split that risk. And I think when I hear people talk about collaboration, I think it's another buzzword that gets thrown about. But I think that, to me, is what energy transition collaboration looks like. We can build ships, we can take the risk of the capital up front, as long as we have contracts in place to share that risk. And I think that is, to me, the ultimate goal of the decarbonization collaboration, in my mind.
But you talked about challenges of alternative fuel, specifically trading in the spot market. You don't know where the ships are going to be trading. You don't know where the fuel is going to be available. Are there any other challenges beyond that you see?
I mean, in a lot of ways, I think we can engineer our way around problems. It's just a case of how expensive is that engineering going to be. And I think, we're not looking at a silver bullet here. We're going to have many different fuels for many different players, for many different trades. I mean, specific companies might have multiple fuels depending on their trading patterns and their different vessels. But, those fuels need to be commercially viable. But even more than commercially viable, they need to be readily available. There's no point in having a cheap fuel if you can't get your hands on it. And, ultimately, that's one of the things we look at, and that's one of the reasons we're leaning towards methanol in the future, is just because, you know, we feel the infrastructure for methanol could be, you know, developed a lot quicker than, let's say, the alternatives. So I think, you know, there's plenty of, you know, hurdles in the way to future fuels. I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work. I just think, you know, to get that mass adoption and, you know, move away from the halo projects, we're going to need some form of price parity. And, you know, the EU ETS will go ways to doing that by putting a price on carbon. But, you know, that's just intra in and out, and, you know, intra EU. I'm sure once that starts, you know, making money, there'll be many more ETUs or ETS schemes coming into play. But, you know, ultimately we're going to need a global level playing field. I mean, realistically, I'm sure some of the commercial guys would kill me for saying this, but, you know, the fuel price doesn't actually matter as long as we're all paying the same price. And it's more about a level playing field than the ultimate cost of the, you know, specific unit of energy.
You know, new technology, as you know better than I, is expensive. And I guess for that point today, with inflation, everything is expensive. You know, and I know you've discussed looking at an investment in new technology and its return on investment, but from your experience, how important is that return on investment discussion before you pull the trigger to deploy a new technology? And in general, if you can share, how close is the real world ROI compared to claims of individual manufacturers and suppliers?
So the cost benefit analysis, being straight, is of paramount importance to us. Every project has to stand on its own 2 feet. We are a business, you know, while we do have, you know, lofty aspirations, at the end of the day, we need to be viable to be around to pull them off. So we generally look at every project on its own. If it's a project we feel, you know, maybe a no-brainer, we might just go for full fleet rollout straight off the bat. But generally, we will run a trial. You know, manufacturers' statements are not always, not that they're incorrect, but they may be based on a different set of assumptions to what we would have in mind. So we would test them, you know, verify our own assumptions. And if they come out to parity, you know, one of the things you can be sure with Ardmore is if it works on one vessel, it'll be on all of them. So, you know, we generally would jokingly say we don't have to tell you whether a project works or not. You just have to look at whether we've bought one of them or bought 22 of them.
You know, as we said, you know, the new technology is expensive. Ships are more expensive today. Obviously, Ardmore has a very modern and a very young fleet. You've made that investment. But ultimately, does this investment in modern, quote unquote, eco ships, does it pay off in the rates that you can earn?
Yes, so as I said at the start, Greg, you know, a hot market is a double-edged sword. You know, we to buy new vessels right now would be massively expensive. That's not to say that we're not building up the suite of products that we want and, you know, looking to the future. Also, do we ultimately see that, you know, coming back in rates? Frankly, no. You know, if you're talking about a specific, you know, charter rate, then not necessarily. We operate predominantly on the market, so it's, you know, voyage charters, you know, the freight rates. Where we would see it is on the fuel efficiencies coming in on our time charter equivalent or our earnings. So, you know, ultimately, that's why each product needs to stand on its own legs, because, you know, we're putting the capital in, we take the full risk, but then we also get the full reward. When it comes to new build vessels, you know, right now the price is sky high, you know, and no one's building for a reason, you know, so hopefully, you know, the market is, if it's one thing, it's sure that will come back. You know, if history has taught us anything, I'd love to believe it won't, but, you know, the realist in me understands it will. But you spoke about our balance sheet. One of the things we're doing is building up, a fund so that when the prices do come back down, we can expand and hit our aspirations to be a bigger company or bigger fleet in that regard. So unfortunately, we're not seeing people pay more for more efficient vessels right now. We can just offer them cheaper than someone with a less efficient vessel.
Excellent, Gary. I truly appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you and your team in the future as well.
Spot on. Thanks, Greg.